Good afternoon. My name is Neil Adelman. I am a member of the Opera Lovers Lecture Corps. Normally, I would be speaking with you from a lectern in front of your meeting room, which I have done before. And I would be talking about Tosca by Giacomo Puccini, which would be the third opera being performed in Lyric Opera's current season. But of course, we're not doing that. So you're seeing and hearing me as a result of the COVID-19 and the technology of Zoom. I hope we'll all get to see this masterpiece pretty soon. But for the present, I hope my talk will help to fill this void. And as you can see, I'm speaking with you today from the empty balcony boxes, at least virtually, at Lyric Opera. So I'm going to be sharing my screen and doing that for the balance of my talk until we get to some Q&As and some discussion at the end of my talk. Okay, you should be seeing, I believe you are, one of the original posters for Tosca. And Tosca is one of Puccini's three most popular operas. They were La Bohème, which was written and performed just before Tosca, and then Madama Butterfly, which closely followed Tosca. And they were the product of Puccini's collaboration with his two best librettists, Luigi Illica and Giuseppe Giacosa. There we go. Okay. So Illica was the dramatist and Giacosa was the poet. Illica would take the original material, plan the dramatic structure, and write the dialogue. And then Giacosa would turn Illica's text into verse. This terrific collaboration unfortunately ended with Giacosa's illness and then his death a few years after Madama Butterfly was completed. Well, the vehicle for Puccini's music was a play, La Tosca, by a French playwright, Victorien Sardou. Sardou was a popular playwright at the end of the 19th century, and his specialty was historical potboilers that were often vehicles for the great Sarah Bernhardt. And La Tosca was specifically written for Bernhardt. It was no exception. Now, Sardou's play, and consequently Puccini's opera, were built around the politics of 1800 Italy. At that time, Italy consisted of separate kingdoms and states that were often ruled or controlled by foreign countries. Rome was part of the Kingdom of Naples, and it was controlled by the Austrian Empire. And meanwhile, at this point, the new ideas of the French Republic were circulating through Europe, the ideas of the French Revolution. And they were competing with the older ideas of royalty and religion as typified by the Austrian Empire. So the Austrian Empire and revolutionary France were at war, with Italy being one of the prizes. And the French army, led by Napoleon, had invaded Italy. Now, for a short time, there had been a short-lived Roman Republic in Italy, following the ideas of the French Revolution. But it had been overthrown, and its leaders had been either killed or imprisoned. So that's the background for our opera. And what Puccini and his librettists did was they took Sardou's 5-act play that had 23 characters, and they pared it down to a 3-act opera with just 3 principal and 3 minor characters. They got rid of most of the political and the anti-clerical aspects of the play. They concentrated on those three characters. And the story was condensed so that the entire story takes place in just about 16 hours in Rome on a specific date, June 17th and 18th of 1800, and it's set in three well-known Roman locations. So the opera was first performed in Rome in January of 1900, and the reception to it was mixed, due at least in part for the physical and the mental torture that occur in Act Two. However, as it was repeatedly performed, it grew in popularity. When it was first performed in London 6 months later, it was a major success. So the musical excerpts that I'm going to be playing are all from a CD that is agreed to be the finest recording of Tosca, and it's generally recognized as one of the greatest opera recordings of all time. It stars Maria Callas as Floria Tosca, Giuseppe Di Stefano as her lover, Mario Cavaradossi, and Tito Gobbi as the villainous Baron Scarpia. And the La Scala Orchestra is conducted by Victor de Sabata. Now my slides are from two different productions. For Act 1 and Act 3, they're from a Metropolitan Opera 1985 production that starred Hildegard Behrens as Tosca, Placido Domingo as Mario Cavaradossi, and Cornell McNeil as Scarpia. For Act 2, they're from a 1964 production, the Royal Opera in London, which stars Maria Callas as Tosca, Tito Gobbi as Scarpia, and Renato Cioni as Mario Cavaradossi. Unfortunately, only Act 2 of that great production was filmed and is available to us. But both productions that you'll see slides from are the Franco Zeffirelli production that at the Metropolitan Opera and elsewhere was the favorite, most beloved production of Tosca for many years, maybe still is. So Act 1 takes place at noontime, just shortly before noon, in the church of San Andrea della Valle. This is a beautiful church, and if you are in Rome in the future, it's just a short walk from the Piazza Navone, and it is definitely worth the trip. It is something to see. So our act begins without a prelude or an overture, with 5 heavy, loud, dissonant chords. And they are the musical motif for the villainous Baron Scarpia. We'll see a man dressed in prison garb, furtively enter the church. And he searches at the base of a statue of the Madonna for a hidden key. He finds it, and he uses it to open a chapel on the side of the church. He enters that chapel and he disappears. Now, we're not told this yet, but this man is Cesare Angelotti, and he was one of the officials of that short-lived Roman Republic that I mentioned before and that was overthrown. And he has just escaped from having been imprisoned in the Castle San Angelo. The Castle San Angelo is on the other side of the Tiber River from the church, but there's a bridge there, and it's only about 1 kilometer away. So let's listen to the beginning of the opera. We'll hear those Scarpia chords and then Angelotti's appearance, his searching for the key and his hiding.
Finalmente, nel terror mio stolto, vede a ceffi di birra in ogni volto. La pila, la colonna. A piede la Madonna mi scrisse mia sorella.
Well, then after Angelotti has hidden himself, another character appears, and this is the sacristan. He is the church custodian and somewhat of a comical figure. Now he looks at scaffolding that's on the side of the church where there is a large painting covered by a cloth, and he climbs up the scaffolding. He sees that a basket of food and wine that he left for the painter, Mario Cavaradossi, is still sitting there untouched. And he complains about having to clean the painter's dirty paintbrushes and about the untouched food. But then the church bells ring, and it is noon. It's time for the Angelus prayer, and the sacristan kneels down to pray. So then the painter, Mario Cavaradossi, enters the church. He climbs the scaffolding, and he uncovers the partially completed painting. And it's a painting of Mary Magdalene. And in the painting, she has blue eyes and blonde hair. The sacristan looks at the painting and he recognizes it. It's a young woman who has been coming to the church in recent days to pray. So now Mario takes a small miniature portrait out of his pocket, and it's a picture of his mistress, the famed singer Floria Tosca. And now he sings an aria about the contrasting beauty of Tosca with her dark hair and dark eyes, contrasting that with the blue-eyed blonde woman in the church that was the unknowing model for his painting. This is the tenor's first big aria, Recondita Armonia, O hidden harmony of contrasting beauties. He ends singing, yet as I paint her portrait, Tosca, my sole thoughts are of you. The lyrics make very clear that Mario is deeply in love with Tosca. And while he's singing, we'll hear the sacristan muttering about how Mario and artists in general are disbelievers and enemies of the church and the state.
Di bellezze diverse e bruna Floria, l'ardente amante mi. Scherza quei fiori, lascia stare i santi. Ed è Tosca all'occhione. Scherza coi fanti e lascia stare i santi. L'arte nel suo mistero, le diverse bellezze insieme confonde.
Well, now the sacristan leaves, and Angelotti, who thinks that the church is empty, comes out of his hiding place in the chapel. But Mario is still there. The two men recognize each other, and Angelotti tells Mario that he's just escaped from the Castle St. Angelo. Mario offers to help him. But then Tosca is heard outside the church. She's off stage, and she's calling for Mario. Mario tells Angelotti that it's a jealous woman and tells him to hide. So he gives Angelotti that basket of food and wine that the sacristan prepared, and Angelotti goes back hiding inside the chapel. So there are two things that we should note here. First, we haven't yet seen Tosca, but we already know some things about her. She is beautiful, and Mario loves her very much. We also know that she is a jealous woman. Also, please keep in mind that basket of food and wine. It's going to play an important part later on. So Tosca calls repeatedly, and then she bursts into the church. She looks around. She accuses Mario of hiding a woman there because she thinks she's heard voices. Mario denies it, and he tries to kiss her. But she chides him not to do that in front of the statue of the Madonna. And then she places flowers before the statue, and she kneels to prayer. Now Tosca tells Mario that she's singing that evening, but it's going to be a short performance, and when she's through, the two of them can go together to Mario's villa that's outside Rome. Mario interjects, "Tonight?" He's distracted, and he's concerned and thinking about his promise to help Angelotti. But now Tosca sings about the romantic evening and the night that the two of them will spend away and protected from the world. And she concludes that she's burning with a mad love. Mario isn't distracted anymore. He calls Tosca his sorceress, and he agrees that the two of them will go to his villa and spend the night there together. Here is their duet. Well, Tosca's about to leave the church, but now she sees Mario's painting of Mary Magdalene, and she recognizes that blonde woman with the blue eyes as being a Roman noblewoman, the Marchesa Adelman. She immediately becomes jealous. Mario tries to explain that he saw this woman praying in church, and unknown to her, he used her as his model for the painting. But Tosca continues to complain about the beautiful woman with blue eyes in the painting. And Mario now tries to placate her by telling her how beautiful her dark eyes are. Here is part of their duet, beginning with Mario singing, "What eyes in the world can compare with your black and glowing eyes?" Well, finally, Tosca's won over. The two of them profess their love, but at the end, and as she's leaving the church, she repeats her earlier direction to Mario to paint the eyes in the painting black.
viaggerosa.
Sì, lo sento, ti tormento, senza posa.
Well, with Tosca gone, Angelotti reemerges from his hiding place in the chapel, and he tells Mario that his sister, the Marchesa Attavanti, has hidden women's clothing for him, a dress and a fan. Mario now understands what that beautiful blonde woman who kept coming to the church and who appeared to be so deeply in prayer was really doing. And Angelotti tells Mario that his sister has saved him from the dreaded Scarpia. And at the mention of Scarpia's name, we hear in the orchestra those deep dissonant chords of the Scarpia motif. Mario replies that Scarpia is a licentious bigot who uses religion for his libertine lusts. And he proclaims, "I will save you should it cost my life." So now Mario tells Angelotti that he should go to his country villa, and that if he needs to hide when he's there, he can do so in a secret passage that's in the well in the garden. But suddenly a cannon shot rings out, and that tells both of them that Angelotti's escape has been discovered. And Mario and Angelotti then both very quickly leave the church for his villa. So now the sacristan returns, and he is rejoicing over news that's just been received that Napoleon has been defeated at the Battle of Marengo. And he tells a chorus of choir boys who come into the church that in order to celebrate that victory, the great Floria Tosca is going to sing a cantata at the church that evening. And also there will very shortly be a Te Deum service in the church. Well, the choir boys are laughing and shouting, but just then, Baron Scarpia and his minions enter, accompanied again by that Scarpia motif in the orchestra. Scarpia immediately chides all of them for making such a racket in church, and he orders his men to search for the escaped Angelotti. So here we'll see the sacristan and the choir boys, followed by Scarpia's ominous appearance. Listen to how the music changes from the happy celebration to the fearful sounds when Scarpia arrives.
E questa sera gran fiaccolata, veglia di gara a Palazzo Farnese, ed un'apposita nuova cantata con Floria Tosca. E nelle chiese inni al Signor, ordi a vestirdi, non più clamor, via, tutta vestia, come sola, e nella baccana in chiesa, bel rispetto.
Well, Scarpia's men start searching, and they find the unlocked chapel, and they turn up the now empty basket inside the chapel. The sacristan, he's cowering, he is scared to death of Scarpia, and he tells Scarpia that that basket was full of food for Mario and was left near the scaffold, not in the chapel. Scarpia recognizes that this is Angelotti's family chapel. And he recognizes Mario's painting as being a painting of the Marchesa Attavanti, who he knows is Angelotti's sister. Scarpia is one smart cop. He puts two and two together. He concludes that Angelotti hid in the chapel and that Mario was helping him. His first words about Mario are critical. He, Tosca's lover, a suspect character, a revolutionary. Well, just then, Tosca returns to the church, and she's come to tell Mario that she must meet him even later that evening, because now she has to sing this cantata to celebrate the victory over Napoleon. Now, Scarpia has also found a woman's fan in the chapel, and it has the Adelman family crest on it. When he sees Tosca enter the church, he says to himself, Iago had a handkerchief, and I have this fan to drive a jealous woman to distraction. Scarpia obviously knows Tosca very well, both her jealousy and her religious devotion. So he begins by offering her a touch of holy water, having just dipped his hand in the church basin. Then he praises her heaven-sent voice that revives the faith of men. But now he tells her that other women come to the church for reasons other than to pray. He shows her the fan with the Adelman crest, and he lies. He tells her that he found it on Mario's scaffold. He suggests to her that Mario and the Marchesa were together for a lover's rendezvous. Tosca reacts just as Scarpia planned. Her former suspicions and her jealousy are reignited. She is now sure that Mario is seeing another woman at his villa, and she charges out to find them. And Scarpia sends his henchman, Spalletta, to follow her. So now Scarpia is left in the church as that Te Deum service is beginning. First, parishioners and then churchmen, including the cardinal, enter in a procession. They're singing, the church bells and an organ are heard in the background as Scarpia muses on his plans. He sings, Va Tosca, go Tosca. Scarpia has let loose the falcon of your jealousy. And he has a double target in mind. Angelotti, the rebel, on the gallows, but even more so, Tosca in his arms. Finally, the service gets through to him. He makes the sign of the cross. He drops to his knees and proclaims, Tosca, you make me forget God. And then he joins in the service. So here is Scarpia and our conclusion of Act 1 at the Te Deum service. Okay, on to Act Two. Act Two takes place that evening in Scarpia's apartment in the Farnese Palace. This is another Roman landmark. It was built in the 16th century, and it was the most imposing palace in Rome for many years. It was a major seat of government at one time, and today it is the French embassy. So Scarpia is alone at a table, and he's musing on how Tosca will lead him to his prey, and tomorrow he's going to hang both Angelotti and Mario. One of his henchmen enters. Scarpia tells him that he should bring Tosca to him after her concert. And then through the open window in Scarpia's apartment, we hear the party downstairs, where the Queen is celebrating the victory over Napoleon at Marengo. So now Scarpia is alone, and he sings how Tosca will come and she will yield to him because of her love for Mario. He sings his credo about how he relishes violent conquests. He has no interest in romance. He will take a woman, cast her aside, and then go after another. He sings how God made diverse women like diverse wine, and he intends to taste his fill of both. Let's listen.
Sapore, la conquista violenta, quel mellifluo consenso, io di sospiri e di lattiginosi almeno una ripoco m'appago, non so trarre accordi di chitarra né oroscopo di fior, e far l'occhio di pesce tu barco me tortura la cosa bravata perseguo me ne sazio e via la getto alta nova io che ho diverse beltà vini diversi io voglio star quanto più posso dell'opera divina.
Well, then Spoletta comes in to report, and he tells Scarpia that he followed Tosca to Mario's villa. And when she left, he entered the house and he searched for Angelotti. He couldn't find Angelotti, but Mario was there and was acting suspiciously. So Spoletta has arrested him and brought him back to the Farnese Palace. So now Mario is brought in. Scarpia accuses him of aiding Angelotti and begins questioning him. Mario denies everything. Here's a little of their interchange. You'll hear Tosca through the open window because she's singing at the concert downstairs. And also partway through, listen to how the orchestra builds the tension in the background.
Fedele al fatto chi m'accusa i vostri birri invan frugar la villa segno che ben celato sospetti di spia alle nostre ricerche egli rideva e rida ancor questo è il luogo là sia nascosto. Prego, prego!
Well, Tosca enters. She sees Mario and she runs to embrace him. He warns her, say nothing or they will kill me. Then Mario is taken into an adjoining room off stage to be tortured. Scarpia describes the torture to Tosca. At first, she's resolute. She doesn't say anything. But after a while, as she hears Mario's offstage cries of pain, she finally gives in, and she tells Scarpia where Angelotti is hiding. Nel pozo, nel giardino, in the well, in the garden. Well, Tosca's telling Scarpia that Angelotti is hiding in the well at Mario's villa is the critical turning point of this opera. Scarpia may be evil incarnate, but he's a police officer and he has to follow the law. Up until this point, he doesn't have any evidence against Mario. His questioning and his torturing haven't worked. It's Tosca who gives Mario away. And how does she know that Angelotti is at Mario's? Only because of Scarpia playing on her jealousy that sent her to the villa to confront Mario in the last act. Scarpia knew exactly who he was dealing with, a jealous woman. So now Mario's brought back in. He's been beaten, he's bleeding. Tosca tells him that she didn't say anything, but then Scarpia repeats with relish, in the well, in the garden, and sends his men to arrest Angelotti. Mario curses Tosca for having told, but just then another of Scarpia's men comes in, and he tells him that the prior news they received was wrong. Napoleon has been victorious and defeated the Austrians in the Battle of Marengo. So now Mario, in spite of having been beaten, struggles to his feet and he sings out, Vittorio, Vittorio, victory, victory, freedom will return. Scarpia, you'll get yours. Tosca begs him to be quiet, and Scarpia rejoices that now Mario will hang. His outburst has further convicted him. Mario is led off to prison. Here is the scene. So now Scarpia returns to sweet-talking Tosca since the two of them are alone. He asks her, how can we save Mario? And he offers her a glass of Spanish wine. She asks, ¿Cuánto? How much? What is your price to release Mario? And Scarpia replies to her that I don't sell myself to a beautiful woman, a Donna Bella, for money. My price is you, Tosca, yourself. Only you can save Mario. Here is part of their exchange.
Quanto?
Quanto?
Il prezzo?
So now Tosca expresses her hatred for Scarpia, and he replies how her hatred has only inflamed his lust for her. So at this point, Tosca sings her big aria, Vici d'arte, vici d'amore. I lived for art, I lived for love. It's a prayer. She's led a religious life, and how can she be repaid in this manner? In modern terms, it's the question, why do bad things happen to good people? But sung much more beautifully than we can ask it. Here is a portion of her aria. Well, Tosca is forced to give in. She's going to submit to Scarpia. But now he explains to her that he can't just release Mario. They have to go through a mock execution, and after that, Mario will be free. He calls in Spoletta, and he tells him that Mario is to be shot in a sham execution, just like they did with Count Palmieri. Scarpia repeats, a sham one, like Palmieri. Do you understand? Spoletta says that he does, and he leaves. So now Tosca demands a safe conduct pass for Mario and herself. And while Scarpia is writing it out, she sees a knife on the supper table. She looks at it, she picks it up, and she hides it behind her back. Scarpia finishes writing the pass, and he advances to embrace Tosca. He cries out, "Now you are mine," and she replies, "Accursed one, this is Tosca's kiss," and she stabs him in the chest. Scarpia is dying. He asks for help, and Tosca taunts him. "Die, die," she says. Here is their final confrontation.
Tosca, finalmente mia! Maledetta! Aiuto, muoio! Soccorso, muoio! Ah! Soccorso! Aiuto! Muoio, muoio! Aiuto! Soccorso, muoio! Soccorso, aiuto!
Ti soffoco il sangue!
Muoio!
Muori, dannato! Muori! 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 È morto!
And after he dies, she says, "Now I pardon him." There's only one further spoken line in the act. Tosca looks down on Scorpia's corpse and says with disdain, "Before him all Rome trembled." Then she washes her hands. She searches for the safe conduct pass, and she finds it in Scarpia's clenched fist and takes it with a shudder. She's about to leave, but then she turns back, and she places candles from the supper table, one on each side of Scarpia's body, and she takes the crucifix from Scarpia's desk and puts it on his chest. Then she leaves the room as the orchestra fades out and the act ends. So now on to Act 3. It takes place at the Castle St. Angelo the next morning, very early in the morning. And this too is an actual landmark in Rome. It is a large fortification on the banks of the Tiber River. It was originally built as a tomb for the Emperor Hadrian, and then it was a fortress for the popes for many years, and then it became a prison. And it is the prison from which Angelotti escaped at the beginning of our opera, and in which Mario is now confined. So we've come full circle in just about 16 hours, and we're on a portion of the roof surrounded by a high parapet wall. The act begins with Puccini painting a musical picture of Rome at dawn. It's a peaceful picture in striking contrast to the preceding act and the drama that'll unfold in this act. It begins with the offstage song of a shepherd boy, and then we hear the early morning church bells in Rome. And then we see Mario, and he's trying to write a letter to Tosca, and he sings the tenor's second big aria, E lucevano le stelle, how the stars shone and the earth was perfumed when he was with Tosca. Now, the excerpt that I'm going to play begins with Mario remembering Tosca's sweet kisses, and it ends with his singing how that dream of love has now vanished forever as desperately I die. Well, just as he finishes, Tosca rushes in to tell him that he is saved, and she relates how she agreed to give in to Scarpia, and how, after he had written the safe conduct pass for the two of them, she stabbed him to death. Mario expresses disbelief. Scarpia yielded? This was his first act of clemency, and Tosca cuts him off with, yes, and his last. So now she explains the mock execution to Mario and how he has to pretend to die. And since she is an actress, She's going to instruct them what they should do. And then the two lovers sing about their deep love for each other and their dreams for the future.
Amaro sol per te al morire, da te la vita prendo ogni splendore, all'essere mio la gioia ed il desire. Nascondite come di fiammardore, io folgorare i cieli e scolorire, vedrò nell'occhio tuo rivelatore e la verità delle cose più mie avrà salda te voce.
So now at one point they sing with no accompaniment, and their voices just soar as they sing, "Together in exile we shall bear our love through the world." Then Tosca sings, "How with 1,000 kisses I shall seal your eyes and call you by 1,000 names of love." But then they're interrupted as we hear the church bells tolling 4 a.m. It's time for the execution.
Di nuova spene nell'anima freme in celestial crescente ardor ed in armonico vol già l'anima va all'estasi d'amor.
Gli occhi ti chiuderò con
So the soldiers arrive and the sham execution proceeds. Tosca stands off to one side, whispering instructions to Mario. The soldiers fire, Mario falls. Tosca marvels at what a good acting job he's doing. The soldiers leave, and after a few moments, she tells him that it's safe to get up, repeating her call, "Mario, Mario," that we heard when she first entered the church. But Mario doesn't stir. She goes over to him and she discovers, to her horror, that the execution was not a sham. Scarpia's instruction, like Palmieri, meant that the supposed sham execution was to be the real thing, and Mario is dead. Just then, Spoletta and his soldiers arrive. They found Scarpia's body and they've come to arrest Tosca. She runs to the edge of the battlement and leaps to her death, crying, "O Scarpia, avanti a Dio. Scarpia, we shall meet before God." And the curtain falls. So here is that final scene, beginning with Tosca commenting on how long the approaching execution is taking and going through to the end of the opera.
presto, su, Mario, Mario, su presto, andiamo, su, Mario,
Tosca, pagherai ben cara la sua vita!
Okay, after that, we've got to lighten up a little bit. So here I am back in the balcony, and we're going to talk about Macbeth. There are a lot of superstitions about Macbeth. Theatrical people don't call it by name. They call it the Scottish play. And that's because if anything can go wrong in a Shakespeare play, it's going to go wrong in Macbeth. Well, Tosca is the operatic version of Macbeth. It is the Macbeth of opera. If anything can go wrong in an opera, it's going to go wrong in Tosca. The most famous story involves the soprano who the stagehands didn't like. So they put a trampoline in place of the mattresses that she's supposed to land on when she jumps from the parapet at the end of the opera. But instead of falling to her death, that Tosca came bouncing back up, apparently several times. And in another production, the soldiers were a bunch of newcomers. They misunderstood their direction. Instead of rushing to the parapet to look down where Tosca had jumped, they ran to the parapet and they jumped after her. And in yet another production, the soldiers mistakenly shot Tosca instead of Mario. On another occasion, in the final clinch in Act 2 between Collis and Gobi as Tosca and Scarpia, Collis's wig caught on fire from the candelabra. She didn't know it, and Gobi was embracing her with extra exuberance, trying to put out the fire. She thought he was just getting too fresh, and she was fighting him until finally it became clear what was going on. And then Gobi tells the story about another performance where he was playing with a very young Tosca. She was so afraid of him that after she stabbed him, she screamed and ran off stage. And finally, there was a production where the prop man forgot to put out the murder weapon in Act 2. So Maria Callas stabbed Tito Gobi to death with a banana. So that's all I've got. Unfortunately, we can't do with this film, with this video, with any questions and answers, but I'm sure hopefully there are some things you'll want to discuss among yourselves. So thank you very much. And that ends my presentation.